Glad you found us at Freedom at Faith. We're glad that you're here. I hope you'll watch this very important topic. What to do when it hurts. What to do when you're going through a difficulty, when you're struggling in some sort of area and you don't know what to do. You pray and it seems like you're still going through a boatload of hurt. And I'll just tell you, it's been a couple weeks since I've downloaded a video here because my wife and I have been going through a time of difficulty, of lots of hurts, and trying to process all that. God's been teaching me some things, and I want to share a few of them with you. Before we actually get into the slide presentation, I want you to just think, and I've taught on this before, but I want you to think about if you will, the sources of hurt that can come our way. Sometimes we hurt because man, I did something really awful. I knew it was bad. I sinned, and now I'm living with the consequences. I'm suffering the consequences of that sinful choice. Sometimes we are hurt or we're suffering because we did something we thought it was okay to do, and here we are. We're suffering now, and it was really out of ignorance. We really tried to do the right thing, but ended up not being the right thing in hindsight. It might be that you're suffering because evil people have made evil choices, and you were the victim of some other person's bad, wicked, evil, sinful choices. Maybe you are hurting simply because you're part of the human race. Romans 8 talks about all of creation groaning and looking forward to the day when all of creation will be healed and redeemed. So the reality is that death and sickness and many things come just because we're part of Adam's race. So whatever your source of hurt or suffering or difficulty, I want to talk to you just a little bit about what it means to suffer. What do we do when we feel like it hurts? And if you got your Bibles, I invite you to Hebrews chapter 12 and 11, chapters 11 and 12, Hebrews chapter 11 and 12. And we're going to look at just kind of unpack a few things like that. Something that I often hear is this, Pastor Dean, why are we struggling? Why are you struggling? I prayed, I asked God to do something, and now it just doesn't seem to be working out like I thought it would. Sometimes you may have heard that phrase, well, prayer changes things. And I understand how people use that, but here's the reality. Prayer doesn't actually change things. God changes things. And prayer is our means of laying out our heart before a holy and wise and loving God. So what do we do? Is it okay when prayer doesn't change things? And we might ask this big question, but why? Why isn't prayer changing things? Well, sometimes prayer doesn't change things because that trial or that hurt that I want to end is actually designed to change me. And if God answered that prayer, God make it stop, it wouldn't produce that change in me. It might be that sometimes prayer doesn't change things because God is going to use this to change someone else through my trial or through my hurt. Am I willing to embrace that and say, God, if it means that I have to go through some pain or difficulty or trial, I'm willing to do that. If you can be honored and people can grow and learn and be helped, then okay. Thirdly, sometimes prayer doesn't change things because God really wants to use me. He wants to allow things to be bad enough, long enough, so that He empowers me to change those things through His leading and guiding. We're going to introduce you to Hebrews 12, these 3 verses that I want you to be thinking about. The writer of Hebrews says, now, no chastening. And when you read that, think of the word discipline in its broadest sense, not just punishment for wrongdoing, although it can sometimes mean that, but more broadly, it's difficulty and hurt that comes into our life to do something. So the chastening could be a physical difficulty, trial that I'm going through. That chastening could be another person outside of me that is making a choice that's affecting me and hurting me in some way. So no chastening or discipline in its broadest sense is joyful for the present. It is painful. Let's just acknowledge that it's painful. Nevertheless, afterward it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness. So it's designed to do something, and that is to yield some fruit in your life. And here's what our response has to be to those who've been trained by it. So that hurt or difficulty trains us to do something. Therefore, we're supposed to strengthen our hands, which hang down. That could certainly be a human illustration of somebody who's just depressed and listless, or feeble knees, in other words, fearful and anxious. And we're supposed to make straight paths for our feet. In other words, we're supposed to run for help so that that which is lame is not dislocated, but rather healed. I'm just going to share with you an illustration. When I was in college, I was on a summer tour, and we stayed at a sweet, dear lady's house out in the country. And when we met her at the church before she brought us to her house, it was obvious that she was disabled. She had her arm was hanging limply by its side. Couldn't really operate. Didn't really have any strength in that arm. And so she brought us to her house and prepared a meal for us, and was just a gracious hostess. And in the course of the night, she said, "Here's what happened to me. When I was a young child, living out in the country on a farm, my shoulder was dislocated. And because her mom and dad didn't know what to do with it, that arm just healed or semi-healed in its dislocated condition. Now, today we'd have rushed her to the hospital, popped that shoulder back in, and did what we could do to make sure that would heal up. Now, my elbow was dislocated when I was in college, but because they rushed me to the doctor and they put that elbow back into its joint, it wasn't dislocated permanently. Because that happened, I was able to heal. But if that dislocation is not properly healed, if it's not put back into that joint, then yeah, you're going to be lame, turned out of the way, not able to move forward. So when we have this hurt in our life, I just want to encourage you, we need to run to Jesus. And what that means is we're going to run to Him to find the healing we need. We're going to let that hurt grow us stronger. We're going to let that hurt help you to stay dependent, help me to stay dependent. We're going to let that hurt be used in the lives of other people. In a short phrase, we're going to try to respond in faith to the hurt and difficulty we're going through. Now, in chapter 11, we often call that a faith chapter. So when it hurts, we want to exercise faith. And faith says what? Faith says, well, we're going to hope for. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. By it, elders, people lived before us, they obtained this good testimony. By faith, here's what we understand, that the world was framed by the word of God. He's the great creator God. And that the things which were not are made of things which are visible. But without faith, it's impossible to please God. For he that comes to God must believe that God is, and that God is a rewarder to those who diligently seek him. So that's kind of a definition of what this kind of faith would be. So we have to come to the God that is, not a small g God of our own imagination. The great creator God who made everything we see out of nothing. That's the God we come to. Because God doesn't really need us. He's not defined by us. He's the great creator of all. So we need to come to God on his terms for his pleasure. He that comes to God, confident of his good intentions for us. Friend, do you understand that God is for you? Paul makes it so clear in Romans chapter 8. He is a rewarder of those that diligently seek him. Now, can I just add this little caveat, friends? So God is a rewarder of those who seek him. And some people, as I've said a couple, 3 weeks ago, some people are really not seeking God. They're more or less seeking God's stuff. They're trying to use God for their own ends. You know, they're trying to use God as a means to something else instead of just seeking him for who he is. So if that is not okay with you, then I got to ask you a question. Can I just ask some blunt questions? Here they are. Are you still trying to be the center of the universe? So what truth about God would help you to remind you of your need of him being the center of the universe? Maybe what truths you need to remind yourself of? Or do you have what one author called eternity amnesia? You forget that there's an eternity out there and that our life is just a vapor. It's just a brief time. And soon we'll be in the eternal presence of God, because salvation is not about getting what you want from God or out of God. It's about God rescuing you from self-centered lies of sin, slavery, and all the horrible consequences of sin, not the least of which is an eternity separated by him. So let me ask you, what could this look like then, this kind of faith, this faith in God? So he's going to give us some examples here in Hebrews 11. He's going to use Abel as our first example. He offered to God an more excellent sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained this witness that he was righteous. God testifying of his gifts, that through it, Abel, although he's dead, he still speaks this testimony of God's ability to approve him. A second example is Enoch, taken away because he didn't see death. He was not found. God just took him. For before he was taken, he had this testimony. He pleased God. That was his testimony. That's what faith looked like. Faith looked like bringing the offering God was calling for. Faith looked like walking and talking and pleasing God in your life. Here's two more examples. By faith, Noah, divinely warned of things not yet, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world, became heir of righteousness, which is according to faith. 120 years, Genesis says, he built this ark that God asked him to build. And then when he came out of the ark, amazing, he took 1/7 of all the living creatures that he had, all of his livestock, if you will, and offered them as a burnt offering to God. What an amazingly costly sacrifice. And then the next example we see in verse number 8, by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called out of the place that he grew up in, which he would receive for an inheritance. He went out not knowing where he was going. God said, get up and follow me. And Abraham said, all right, I'm going to do it. So that to me is what faith could look like. Abel could have prayed this, oh God, keep me safe. Or he could have said, well, worship's no big deal. I can just bring my style of worship. But Abel's faith caused him to be clear and purposeful in his worship and obedience. Enoch could have prayed, let me live my best life now. Lord, I just want to live out my life here. I just want to see my grandkids and great grandkids and however long. I just want to keep living. Noah could have prayed, don't let it rain. Isn't there just another way? Abraham did pray, well, let Ishmael be the one that is your chosen child. So All of these people experience really levels of faith in following God. So a prayer of faith would be something like this. Um, Lord, do whatever you need to do to make me more like Jesus. Do whatever will bring greater glory to you, God, whatever that takes. Whatever you need to do so that you'll be exalted in other people's eyes. Do you see those kinds of prayers of faith when we are hurting? Here's some truths that I think keep us centered, allow us to stand out as light in a dark place. We seek a different city. We seek a different identity. We seek a different God, the one that's worthy being unashamed of. We seek a different God who is able. We seek a different God who is worth more than all the things around us. Even when we don't receive what would make us happy, we have a higher goal, a better thing, as described in the end of chapter number 11. Now, when we think about the sequence of hurt, here's the reality, friends. Hurt is just a part of being on this earth. Even Christ endured hurt, it says in chapter 12. Contradiction of sinners. Jesus himself suffered. And it is unlikely that any of us will suffer death in our battle against sin. We're not going to suffer the ultimate hurt of death, as described in verse number 4. Because we live in a sin-tarnished world, yes, hurt will come. It's a part of what God says will be in our world today. So if we don't have God and we don't know how to deal with hurt, we're always tempted to that self-destructive idolatry that Romans 1 illustrates for us. And we begin to try to handle hurt our own way instead of finding our strength and healing and purpose in God and His plan for us. So hurt is something God intends to use in our lives, to instruct, to change, to chasten. Yes, even bringing hurt into our lives to help us see how much we need God. Hurt in life reveals that only God can do what needs to be done in our lives. We can't do this on our own. So hurt plays a role in getting us close enough to Jesus to be healed. If I can go back to that Hebrews passage. What we want to do is we want to run to Jesus. We want to make sure that we're running to Him and saying, oh God, please heal me. I want this dislocation, this pain that I'm experiencing in this dislocation. I want to be put back into joint. I want to be healed. And God, I know you can help me to do that. God, I want to grow. I want to grow more strong in this trial, in this hurt. Lord, I want that hurt to help me to stay dependent on you, and maybe sometimes on other people as well. Let hurt be used to bless other people. 2 Corinthians talks about that blessing. When we receive comfort, we're able to comfort other people who struggle as well. In a phrase, we want to respond to God in faith. So friend, did you think about the hurt that you're going through? Let me just encourage you to again respond by running to Jesus. Let me encourage you, the hurt that you're going through, maybe it's just because you're part of the human race. You have disease and death and illness and all of that happens. Maybe it's because evil people have done evil things to you. God can even use those horrible things, as He did in the life of Joseph and David and many others. And maybe you're suffering because it's your own really choices that you made, maybe in ignorance. And then sometimes, it's just high-handed. We're suffering the consequences. You know, in all of it, in every hurt, no matter what its origin, there is grace and mercy for you. God comes as a healer. Jesus said, I've come to seek and to save that which is lost. I've come to give you healing and peace and joy in the middle of the difficulty you're going through. And He's promised to go with you in every trial and hurt that you're experiencing. Listen, if we can be a blessing to you at all, we'd love to be. You can contact either personal message this video, or you can reach out to Faith Baptist Church. We would love to hear from you, especially if you're in the Taylor, South Carolina area. We can be a blessing to you. We'd love to be. God bless you with a great week.